Hello, my name is Dick Fleming, and during the Vietnam War I was a member of First Force Recon, Recon Battalion, and I tell my stories in a book that I wrote called Chasing Charlie, stories about Vietnam. And I also have a website called firstforcerecon.com, which is has resources on there to the recon community in general, and photographs that other people have sent me, and where I took myself during my tour of duty in Vietnam. So today, what I'd like to tell you about is my experience when I first joined First Force Recon. I had been assigned, as I said, to Recon Battalion when I first entered the country, and we were located in Camp Reesner, which is located right outside of Da Nang, quite a ways outside of the city itself, but still in the Da Nang area. So I was gradually learning, getting to know the guys in my team with Recon Battalion, who were great guys and interesting characters in their own right. And I was also learning my way in the bush, how to handle myself in the jungle, what to look for, and how to react in the case of contact, the hand signals, hundreds of little things that you needed to know, on-the-job training certainly, if you wanted to survive in Vietnam. So our compound was located, as I said, at Camp Reesner, and we were told that First Force Recon would be moving down from a fire base to the north of us and would be joining the camp. And the camp was sort of split in two by this stream that ran down from the mountain. On one side was Battalion Recon, and when these guys arrived, they took over the side of the camp closer to Da Nang City itself. So they were on the eastern side of the camp. And basically, they had the same hooches as we did, with the same facilities, but we shared the mess hall, and we see these guys when they first came in. They were easily identifiable because most of them had golden jump wings or silver jump wings on their chest, and they had jump boots, and their hair was in a really shaved really closely on the sides, and just a little duffed on top. And it seemed like they were always doing PT. They were out there. They were running every morning. Before breakfast. We'd hear them running along, and they'd be chanting their tune, their chants. If I die in this combat zone, pack me up and ship me home, pin my wings upon my chest, tell my ma I did my best. Hurrah! Well, we thought they were real cowboys, to tell you the truth. We were not impressed. For one thing, at the time they weren't. They just gotten there, and they were so busy setting up their camp. They weren't running on any patrols. And of course, we were coming in from the bush, and we'd see these guys up there, like prima donnas, and we kind of resented them. They kept to themselves. They kind of standoffish attitude, like they were superior. They didn't mingle, but we didn't mingle either. Outside of our teams. We didn't really mingle with the other guys in the company. We kept to our own group, our own platoon, and didn't do a lot of fraternizing. But these guys were particularly standoffish, you know. They had an attitude about them, so to speak, and we were not impressed. Well, I came back off of a patrol, my third patrol, I think it was. I had been with Recon Btn about 7 weeks. Came back off of the patrol, and after the debrief that we had, the sergeant, you know, he's a guy of my age, or maybe even a little younger, they'd call me over, and he was really a stone cold killer. It was a second term in Vietnam, and you know, if anything had. He was not a man that he was not a Marine you don't want to screw around with. That's for sure. He had a coldness about him that the war had forged in him. That was unlike anything I have met since. He was really a stone cold killer. That's what the way I would say him. And I didn't really know him that well. Even though he was our sergeant, you know, he would come in and lay down the map and give us our orders and tell us a little bit about where we were going and what we were expected to do. And once we were in the bush, he was 100% focused on the mission and didn't tolerate any bullshit at all. And when we got back, you know, after we all got cleaned up, he didn't fraternize with us. I don't know where he went. You know, he disappeared until the next mission. It almost seemed like he lived for that adrenaline rush that he got in combat, and that anything else was sort of superfluous. Anything else was meaningless to him. He was so focused. Very strange person. I just never met anybody like him before or since. Well, anyway, he called me over, and he said, "Rick," and that's my new name, given to me by Garcia. Well, Rick, he says, you know, pack your stuff. You're being transferred out. I said, oh, jeez, you know, transferred out. You know, I figured maybe I screwed up. You know, the last patrol that we were on, he had told me to run point, you know, which was an extremely dangerous but also responsible position. And, you know, to run point, you had to keep your eyes on focused on every little thing in the jungle. You know, you're basically leading the team in a way. You're choosing the proper course that they're going to follow, and make sure that you're undercover, and that you keep your eyes open everywhere to watch out for any booby traps or any evidence of the enemy. A very responsible position. Not that we had a lot of booby traps. We were usually going further out, you know, and it wasn't like we were in the southern part of Vietnam, close to the bases where the booby traps were everywhere. Where we were in their home country of the NVA, and I guess they didn't want to stumble on their own booby traps. But there was certainly a lot of stuff that you had to keep your eyes open for, and I was proud that he had chosen me. I thought that was a real sense of accomplishment for me. He trusted me enough to be in that position. And so when he told me I was going to be transferred out, I was heartbroken in a way. I thought I had screwed up. And that's what I said to him. I said, you know, what did I do? I thought I did a good job out there. And he said, that's not my decision. You're going to be transferred over to Force Recon. I said to him, I don't want to be transferred out. I want to stay with your team. And he said, no. He said, the captain knew that Recon was coming down here in a month or so. and you're jump qualified, right? I said, yeah. And he said, well, you know, anybody who's jump qualified, you know, you'd be transferred over to Recon anyway. That's just the way it works. And I said, well, oh, geez, you know, I really don't want to go. And he said, well, he goes, you did a good job for us. He goes, you're going to make a good bush Marine. And with that, he shook my hand. He held out his hand and shook it. That meant a lot to me, let me tell you. I did. I didn't want to go. I had bonded with those guys in Recon Battalion, and I didn't want to go. But it wasn't, like he said, it wasn't my decision. I guess when I was there I just was filling a slot, you know, in a way. You know, they needed somebody in that team to make up the sixth man or the seventh man. They needed somebody, and I was gonna get that experience, whether I wanted to or not. And of course I did. I wanted that experience at the time. I wanted to experience combat. I wanted to prove myself. That's what I wanted, and I got it. I got it. Be careful what you wish for, right? So I packed my stuff, and the other team, they were getting ready to go out again, and they didn't. My team battalion, they were packing up and ready to get out, so we didn't have a chance to, you know, kiss each other goodbye, so to speak. I did thank Chief, you know, for everything he taught me, and you know, we hugged one another, and he went off with the other guys. We promised to stay in touch, but of course that didn't happen. So I trottled my way across the compound, you know, with some of my gear, and I went looking for the first platoon of First Force Recon. I had my new orders in hand, you know, from being transferred over. And the first platoon's hutch was actually over the creek that separated the two compounds. And one side of it was really on Battalion Recon side, and the other side of it was on Force Recon's territory. But of course, that was just a minor point. So I knocked on the door there, and the guys are laying there, and in the hooch. They had just come back from I guess Freedom Hill, and I said, I've just been assigned to you guys, and one guy raises himself up and goes, ain't we the lucky ones? But a few minutes later, the sergeant comes over, and you know, instead of the experience I had when I first saw the sergeant from Recon Battalion, which was like this icy cold came over the entire hutch. These guys didn't even move, and he came in, and he came right over, and he goes, "Oh, you're Rick. You're going to be coming into our team, right?" And he couldn't have been friendlier, and there was no sense of that coldness that my other Sergeant Blaze had himself surrounded by. This guy, he says, "I'm Sergeant Tom. You know, please, really glad to meet you." He goes, and you're coming over from Recon Battalion. He goes, we're a great group of guys. He goes, you got your stuff? I go, no. I still got my foot locker, you know. And he goes, well, come on, I'll help you. We'll get you moved in. Jesus, you know, that was nice. So he helped me move my foot locker, you know. I had already started writing the names of my first patrols on it, and he helped me move my equipment over. and he showed me a bunk. Take this bunk. Nobody's here. That's good for you. And he introduced me around the team. And he mentioned, he said, some of these guys are going to be rotating back. He says, I've been here 6 months, but this guy Theo, he's our communications guy. He's only got about 3 months left. And Theo smiled. He was really happy, really laid back kind of guy. And he introduced me to Polanski. He was a machine gunner of the team, and we didn't really have a machine gunner, so to speak, but he was another machine gunner, the same as me. And I was going to take his place, and I inherited his machine gun, his stripped down machine gun. I eventually carried that with a sling around my body. The machine gun was stripped down. It was just its bare essentials, and he showed me how, proudly how, it weighed probably only about 20 pounds, without the ammunition. It was could be hand carried almost as much as well as your M16. So that was Polanski, and then there was another guy called Matt. Matt was running point for the team, but he was one of two brothers, and about a week later, he received news that his brother was in the hospital with a severe infection in his arm. And the way he described it to us is that Matt had a leech on his underside of his arm, and he'd taken his K-bar and just scraped it off instead of just hitting it with a bug juice that we normally do. I guess he wasn't thinking, or he just did it unintentionally. But he was in Special Forces, I believe. And Matt, the brother, was in Force Recon, First Force Recon. Well, in any case, that it got infected. Everything got infected in Vietnam real quick. The humid and all the bacteria and dirt, everything got infected. But he went into the hospital and they couldn't stop the infection. And they amputated his arm, and still septicemia came in and killed him. And Matt was sent home. He was sent home because they had a surviving son rule in the Marine Corps. If there were two sons, and if he was the last surviving son, which he would have been, they sent him out of combat. He said he packed his stuff up. I remember so clearly. Packed his stuff up, and he said, don't worry, guys, I'll be back. But of course, he never came back. He would have been a fool to come back, and his poor parents. Can you imagine the shock of that happening? Anyway, there's another guy, Tony. Tony was our medic. We in Recon Battalion. We didn't have a formal Navy medic. Force had in our platoon when I was first there. We had Tony, who was excellent medic, and from my experience, excellent in the bush. So Tony was our medic, but he was due to leave. His term, his tour of duty was over in about 3 months, I guess. So he wasn't with us very long, and actually I ended up taking, carrying the Unit 1 and being essentially the medic, even though I hadn't had the training that he did. And it was a real loss to the team because many of the other teams did not have those Navy medics. There just weren't enough of them around. The few of them that were there were excellent quote Marines. Boy, Well, yeah, and there were a couple other guys, there that. I guess the team itself was around. With me, was about 7 guys, but as I said, a lot of them were on their way way out of the platoon. They were not short timers exactly, but getting short. And about a month later, we did get more replacements. About a month later, after I had been on a patrol with these guys, one or two patrols, we got in a whole group of them. We got in Bo, Truman rather, Moose. My friend Moose, who was a communications guy, came in. Ma, he was from Maine. He came in. So the team we got, for a while we had four guys that were new. They hadn't been in the bush before, and they were transferred in to augment the men who were leaving. And for a while we had a pretty full platoon there. It didn't last very long because the attrition rate was pretty high in that group, as well as in Recon Battalion. On my website, firstforcerecon.com, there's a picture, a plaque in Recon Battalion of all the men who died in 67, 68. And my God, the columns of men on that plaque. You check it out and take a look at it. To see the sacrifices that were made there. So anyway, I'm really getting off the track today. Really getting off. Put up with me, but if you can. So anyway, Sergeant Tom told me, well, you got to go down. We're going to get you set up because you had to turn in your rifle, to battalion recon. Now I'm going to go down and get another rifle from Force Recon. I went down there and he comes with me, and I go into the armory there, and Sergeant Tom goes, set this guy up with a good weapon, and the armorer pulls out this beat up M16. I mean, it had scratches on it. It really looked like it had been through the war. And I looked at this thing, and I said, is this the best you can do? Because when I was in Recon Battalion, I had been given basically a new weapon. It was pristine, bluing and everything. He says, is that the best you can do? This thing really looks shot. And he goes, listen, son. He goes, this is, and see, I don't think he called me son. He said, listen, this is what, this weapon was Sergeant McGee's weapon. He goes, Sergeant Tom goes, he was medevaced out about a month ago. He goes, this is Sergeant McGee's weapon. He goes, and the trigger's been shaved. He goes, we're not allowed to do that anymore. But this thing has a hair trigger on it. And you're fortunate to get it. Boy, I was. I was. I carried that weapon, and the trigger was so fast on that thing, and I could pull it. It would sound like it was on full automatic. It was my buddy. Kept me alive, I'll tell you that. Never jammed on me once. Never jammed on me. It was my faithful tool, if you will. So we went back to the compound, and that was the end of the day there, and I started working on my getting myself cleaned up for formation. And Sergeant Tom comes over and he goes, I want you to, the first sergeant wants to meet you, the top sergeant wants to meet you. And I said, okay. He said, make sure you're spiffed up, get those. For like formation, he said, okay. So I did. I put on my utilities that were all freshly pressed, and ran a brush over my boots, and got myself ready to meet the top sergeant there, the first sergeant. So I went over to the headquarters, and the office pogue was sitting there typing away, and I said, I was told to report to the sergeant, top sergeant. He goes, okay. He knocks on the door formally, and big deep voice goes, come in, enter. And motions to me, and I enter. And this big guy, looked like a gorilla, a bull of a man. I'm not kidding you. He had a shaved head. His head was completely shaved. He must have weighed about 275. Big chest, big arms. And he had his sleeves rolled up. And I noticed on his arm, he had a tattoo of a meat hook. And the meat hook had blood dripping down it from a piece of meat that was impaled upon it. It was impressive, let me tell you. He was an impressive guy. But later on, I held him in fine contempt because he never went out in the bush, and he was dumb as a rock. I swear. I'll tell you more about him later. At Anwa, the way what happened there. But at the time, I was intimidated. Let me say that. So he said to me, you're coming over from Recon Btn, those bunch of shitheads. What am I going to say to him? No, they were good guys. He goes, and you're through jump school? He goes, yeah. I said, yeah. He goes, hey, how about scuba? No scuba, no scuba, no. He goes, he sort of, brushes me off there. Apparently he had been scuba qualified. And he goes, what's your experience with the Recon? I said, well, I went through, the Recon indoctrination platoon and went through the evaluation in the Recon indoctrination platoon, and I scored. I was number 1 in my class in RIP. And he goes, that doesn't mean shit around here. And actually, that was true. We got some training in map reading and compasses and how to report enemy movements and stuff like that. But we got our in a month you got more training in the field than you would in a year going through these courses. But so he says, I just got one thing to say to you. He goes, you straighten up and do well, do the best you can, and we'll get along just fine. He goes, you screw up even once. He goes, and I'll be all over you like fleas on a dog. That's what he said to me, fleas on a dog. Well, I believed him. And with that, he held out his hand. I went to shake his hand, and when he grabbed my fist and grabbed my hand, his huge fist, he started to squeeze it. I realized he was trying to break my fingers, or at least that's what it felt like. Well, I tried to respond, as tight as I could, but his arm was 4 times the size of mine. He was a weightlifter. He used to lift weights and be a bodybuilder. That's the way he spent his time, drinking beer and lifting weights. So anyway, I disengaged finally from this handshake, if you want to call it that. And he goes, and another thing, as I was leaving, he goes, make sure you get a recon haircut, a real recon haircut. Well, I said, okay, you get a real recon haircut. And Sergeant Tom, took me over to one of the old papasons, a Vietnamese guy, who I said, Sergeant Tom goes, high and tight. And the guy goes, high and tight, high and tight. So he shaved me high and tight, gave me a real recon haircut. And $1, please, $1. So he wanted his money more than anything. So the next morning, I stood at attention, with my new team, my new platoon. Sergeant Tom was in front. I saw them. I met the major, who was You know, every inch of recon the Marine. He had high and tight. Everything was creased. He had gold jump wings. I was impressed. Muscles, you know, biceps were bulging, you know, straight as an arrow. I was impressed. Well, the captain was there too. He was a big guy too, but sort of running to fat a little bit, but still big. He was in charge of an intelligence section there. And they were inspecting me, and damn, they found the sergeant, the major, you know, and found 2 or 3 things wrong with me. I couldn't say anything about my haircut, but he found some dirt or something in my rifle. At least he said he did. And my shoes weren't quite as spit shined as he liked. And they wrote me up for that. And the captain wrote me up for another thing. Well, I was walking back to the hooch, and I said to Sergeant Tom, I said, damn, I said, you know, I really thought I was, you know, getting past that in good shape, but no, you know, here I am. I'm all written up the first day, and I wanted to, you know, do good, and make a good impression my first time I met the officers here. And he goes, look, it doesn't matter. He goes, you would have been written up anyway. You know, coming over from Recon Battalion, they wanted to show you who's boss here, you know, and before you got any ideas, you would have been written up for anything. Believe me. So that was the way it was, and that's how I entered First Force Recon.